Did you know that all experiences in your life are for you? Welcome to Soul Musings, exploring and embracing higher perspectives with me, Dr. Connie. Discover how every experience is an opportunity for spiritual expansion when we observe and use them from the higher perspective of our soul. Explore how we can create more alignment in our lives by focusing on the essence of the experience we want, rather than the form. Learn about ways of living and working together that can build a more harmonious and cooperative world. In each episode, we share awarenesses and tools that you can use in your own soul's journey to create more love, peace, and joy. Soul Musings starts now. So hi, everyone. Welcome to Soul Musings, exploring and embracing higher perspectives. And we'll just take one moment to ask for the light to be here with us. So you can just take a deep breath, maybe put your hand on your heart. And from the highest place you can imagine, just visualize a brilliant white or white and golden light coming down through the top of your head, through all of your levels of consciousness, through every cell of your body, energizing, renewing, and pushing out anything that you no longer need that is not of your divine nature. And then in your timing, just come back present with us. So today we have a great episode, which is the higher perspective on death and dying. And I think as someone who's had a focus on spirit for most of my life, I've always had the awareness that the soul lives beyond the body, that there are places of consciousness where the soul lives on. Some people believe, as I do, that people can reincarnate several times into different bodies. But my experience with meditation and other spiritual work, and having had both a shared death experience with my mom and a near-death experience myself, I've just been very privileged in knowing that the soul really is not confined to the body or confined to this level and doesn't die when the body might transition. But before we talk in more detail about that, I want to introduce our really special guest today, which is Arlene Stepputat. And she is what's called an end-of-the-life doula. And I'm going to ask her to talk about what that means, but she's got lots of experience with people in the death and dying process, in hospices, in working with people around grief. And I just feel really privileged to have her here today to have this discussion with me. So welcome, Arlene. Nice to have you here.
Well, thank you, Connie, and thanks for taking on a topic that most people don't want to talk about. So I'm very grateful that we're bringing it into the light to have a conversation.
So tell us, what is an end-of-life doula? What do you do? Maybe even how people are trained, and how this can help people, how you help people really make that part of life, which is the transitioning process into another level, have a meaning and value, not just grief.
Yeah, well, first off, if you think back, doula is a Greek word and it actually means women serving. That's the essence of the word.
Wow.
And if we think of births and deaths and sicknesses through history, it's always the women that have been the ones that are helping at the bedside, whether a new life is coming, someone's recovering, or someone's leaving. Right. And the end-of-life doula, so in one way, women have always been doing this, but as a profession, it's probably emerged more in perhaps the last 15 to 20 years as there was sort of what I would say a reclaiming of the death process from the medicalization of it being in the hospitals and the doctors in control, and people wanting to return more to when people died at home and wakes were at home, and we tended to one another without machines and buzz and all that kind of stuff. So an end-of-life doula goes through training. There's a number of programs that involve training. that are reputable, and but it's really the bedside experience that is the training. The patient, every patient and every family is your ongoing teacher. And
Great
the
attitude.
one, well, it's true. And the one thing that we do not do, so I'll tell you what doulas are not. We are not medical people. We have
Mhm.
nothing to do with medications. We are not caregivers. We're not sitting with your patient all the time to do any of the needs that they have. Um, but we are people to help people from the very beginning. So we also work with people that are perfectly healthy to like complete their advanced healthcare directive, to designate if something happened to me and I couldn't speak for myself, would I want to have CPR or not? Well, who do I trust to make that decision? So we talk with perfectly healthy people, and then along the continuum. So people might feel they're getting sick, or they haven't yet gotten a diagnosis, or they've just gotten a diagnosis and they want to navigate. And we help people plan all aspects of their transition to the best way where possible, the environment, the energetic they would like, the preferences of what they would like to have happen once they leave the body. Do they want a memorial? So it's a whole, we kind of meet the patient, the client where they are, and we can get as detailed in terms of legacy planning, all those kinds of things, and also working with their families, which is often the most challenging for the patient, is to get their family on board with them.
And bored in what way?
Well, so there are times when someone is aware that they are dying,
Mhm.
and or they're done. They don't want another treatment. They don't want another intervention. They're
Yeah.
and their family is like, no, you have to live. No, we're gonna one more time, one more clinical trial. So it's kind of, we always start with the needs and wishes of the client or the patient, and it flows out from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when I kind of was with my mom. We didn't have a doula, but I took her through her transition and several health issues. And, at one point she told me, I don't want you to be there when I transition. And I said, why? She said, because, we're so close. I'm afraid you're going to want to hold me here, or I'm not going to want to go when it's time to go because you're here. And it's just going to be more challenging. And I just said to her, Mom, I think I'm going to just trust your soul to to orchestrate it, however is going to be the best for you. And every time I'd leave her, I'd say, God bless you. And um, if it's your time and God's opening his arms, just go. It's okay with me. And I think that that kind of cooperation really helps. But I know my brother was in a very different space, and I can understand what you're saying there about family. Um, it also brings up, I mean, is there anything you've ever done or encouraged people to do in that role? Because I knew somebody when I was working with other people that have had near-death experiences, and there was a woman, and actually I had a friend do this, which was to kind of record a completion or a goodbye to family and friends. Have you heard of that? Have you worked with that with people in terms of, it seems like
Oh
this end,
yeah.
the completion thing is really important.
Well, it's completion, and it can also be considered legacy. And
Mhm.
so I had a friend who wrote a letter to be read at her memorial. And she was really very funny, because the person read the letter, said, hello, my dear friends and family. If you're listening to this letter, you're here and I'm not, and
Right.
and
Well,
so she kind of set a tone to it. So we do have people do those kinds of things and things beyond that. There was a woman who her grandson was only 5 years old, and she got a bunch of birthday cards up to the age of 18, and she wrote birthday cards and gave them to the parents so that this little boy would remember her, and show him that she remembered him.
exactly.
So
There's a
yeah,
lot of,
so
yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. I think any of these ideas, one of the other things I did with my mom is she used to always say, well, I wonder how everybody's going to remember me. What are they going to think of? What memories are they going to have? So I ended up for her 85th birthday putting together a booklet where everybody acknowledge some of their best memories and pictures. And she just loved it because she had a sense of how she was going to be remembered before she went, and all the
Right.
love. And I had another friend where we had a birthday party, which was going to be like 5 people. It turned out to be 60 because she had affected everybody's life and people heard about her. And it was like we were just asking, like, how has she touched your life? And, what's the value of having her in your life? And it was like a memorial only before the person left.
Yeah, living funeral. That's not unusual. A living funeral. Yeah.
Which, gives people a sense of what their life's importance was before they're on the other side, where they may hear it, but they probably don't care at that point as much
Yeah,
as.
and the other thing is, with the ability that we all have with our cell phones, making videotapes and asking questions and recording all of that. I'm aware of someone who did a daughter who asked her father all these questions because he knew he was dying of cancer, and he
Yeah.
gave such brilliant answers that they used his own voice as part of the memorial.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So there's a lot of things, and doulas can be a really important part of helping you learn how to make this a valuable, meaningful time in life, which is a natural part of life that, as you said, we don't always want to think or talk about. How did you get into this work? I know in your bio you said that you experienced several deaths in a very short period of time, including your own dad. Is that related to your being in this work? I'm wondering if it is. I'm assuming it might be. So,
Oh yeah, it was, but of course I didn't know that at the time. I was 11. My father dropped dead, so I was at church with my mom. He didn't come to pick us up. Somebody gave us a ride home, and it was quite a scene on the front lawn with police and ambulance and all that. And I was removed from the scene. And my mom and I never really talked about it. I mean, people didn't think children experienced it. And, I think we've come a long way and we have a long way to go about death and dying. But at that time in particular, people didn't even think that kids understood. I mean, 11, I was,
yeah.
and then when I was 19, I was overseas and a dear friend of mine was murdered and it was national news in England and it was a whole big thing. And yeah, I just ended up before I was probably mid 30s with, you know, many deaths. I had three in 3 weeks and 4 in 2 months. I mean, it was just a lot. And I also worked in New York City in the AIDS crisis. So the idea of working with that, I got to the point where I understood it was part of life. I had a deep faith and I thought it's not going away. I better start befriending it and working with it. And I did some personal growth work and started to touch the grief that I had ignored
Right.
for 25 years. And that opened me up to a wider thing. And, I worked with young people for the longest time, but then I ended up in the AIDS crisis with teenagers that were dying. The role of doula didn't become apparent to me until I worked at hospice for a long time as well. So I learned about doulas, maybe 10 years ago. And one of my friends was running a doula program at her hospice, and I interviewed her. And then she offered me the opportunity to be trained. I had been a hospice volunteer for many years, so I was not foreign to the bedside, but to take it to this next level and its prescribed role was really very rich.
Hmm. Well, tell people how is a hospice volunteer or worker? I mean, are most, I think, hospice workers volunteers? Are they paid or?
No, 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 no,
And how
no.
is that role different than the actual doula?
Well, first off, just so people understand hospice, because it's important. Uh,
Thank you.
one is
Yeah.
one is to get on hospice when you're eligible. Most people think you get on hospice when you're at death's door, and they maybe sign on 3 days before they die. And it's a benefit that you get from being on Medicare, or if you're younger than 65, often your insurance company will pay for hospice if you have a terminal illness. Hospice is one of the only disciplines that comes with a complete team. So yes, you have a doctor and a nurse who oversee your case, but you also get a social worker, you get a bereavement counsel, you get a chaplain if you want, you get home health aides that come to the home. You get a team of people who meet periodically to look at your case, your family, what your needs are. It's prescribed. Hospice is a federal program. So what hospice laws are in California is the same hospice laws in New York State or Florida because it's a federally funded program. Hospice volunteers are mandated by the feds as part of the program.
Okay.
And hospice volunteers do non-medical work. And a lot of times what they do is they sit with patients to give family members respite. Like a person can't be left alone. So the hospice volunteer will befriend the person and maybe sit 3 hours a week so people can get out. They do chores for people. Sometimes they're just visitors. There are people that are in facilities, have no family close by, nobody there to be with them at all. So they're kind of friendly companions. Doulas have more rigorous training in things like ritual and before advanced healthcare directives and things to do like anointing the body afterwards. That's out of the realm of what hospice volunteers would do. So they have a unique role, but a doula is much more augmented.
So is there any disadvantage in going to hospice? I think people think maybe they wait because they think it means they're totally giving up, and maybe the family or they still have some idea that maybe they can recover. And I have heard of people going to hospice and then getting better as well.
Well, they do often. So to me, there's no downside of getting on hospice early because the team evaluates you every 2 weeks, and medically, if you do improve, and I've seen people, we call it, they graduate off of hospice because now they have the right medication and things have improved and they've gotten a little more attention and they will, rally. And so if they're no longer medically eligible, if they're not declining after a while, they have to be released. They're discharged because they're no longer eligible. And the other thing is getting on hospice, you have full agency. You could try hospice for 2 or 3 weeks and decide, I don't want to do that. The only downside about being on hospice is that you cannot seek cure for your illness. So you could be on hospice, then there's a clinical trial that comes up for your particular illness, and you want to try the clinical trial. So you revoke, you get off hospice. You do the clinical trial. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, you can go back on hospice.
Okay.
So it's not a one-way street, and and it's not a one-time thing. But when people wait till the last 3 or 4 days, there's very little that the team can do to support the family and the transition and the preparation. And if you're on for a while, you create relationships.
Yeah.
And that's what gets you through it, instead of a bunch of strangers. So it's a misnomer. It's that fear of death. It's just people think if they go on hospice, they're inviting the Grim Reaper into the front door, and that is not the case.
Well, that's a great clarification for people. I think that's, as you say, I think that is a misperception. So working with death and dying and being around people in their transition for all these years, I mentioned at the beginning that I had I found out was called a shared death experience, because when my mom was passing, and she actually did, the room got light, both bright and, joyful, actually. And it was a very different kind of death than when I've been with other people who have just kind of peacefully gone off or gone away. Um, this was kind of like a rocket ship just blasting out of the physical density into the infinite. It was just a spectacular, and even my young nieces who were in their 20s, and what a way to experience death for the first time, is this joyful experience of going to this wonderful place, because we just got the energy of that. And I don't know if that's typical. I heard later that was called a shared death experience. The young people said, I'm going to miss grandma, but I'm going to think of that moment. And it's so precious. I know the joy of that. Have you had experiences that demonstrate that to me, that was the soul experience. We could feel it different than in the body. What have you experienced, and anything like that you can share with people?
Um, well, I haven't had that with where the room lights up like that. But I certainly have been with people who have sensed that family members were present, which is, uh, it's called visitations. So people from the other side kind of gather around, and I've been with people who say, "Oh, look, there's Daddy," or something, and so there's that sense that people are coming in. And the old TV show Touched by an Angel actually did very good depictions of the angel of death coming and escorting people away. Um, but I've also heard stories, of shared death. And now that there's research about it, there's books written about it. And I think, the kind of spiritual things that occurred to people back in the day, you didn't say anything because people didn't understand. I myself lost my best friend who was like my brother in a car crash. And we buried him. And that night I had a dream, and he came to me in the dream. He didn't say anything. He was
Mhm.
dressed in his funeral clothes, and he hugged me. He just hugged me like to say goodbye. And I woke up from the dream state, and I had felt the sensation of being hugged.
Right.
But I didn't tell anyone about this for years because I expected to be judged, to be labeled, all that stuff. And I knew for me it was very real.
Right.
And I think what's happening now, as we're all changing in consciousness and that death is being discussed in more ways now, you hear the stories, like the word shared death experience is a term that people are aware of. Visitations is a term.
Right. Which,
When
yeah.
I
Yeah.
was just going to say, when Steve Jobs died, there was an essay his sister wrote, and his last three words, they were by his deathbed, and he was kind of in a coma state, and then his eyes popped open, and he said his three final words were, "Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow." Left.
Exactly. Well, having gone to the other side and come back, yes, I can totally relate to that. We have so much we could talk about. And I love that we're just looking at from a higher perspective, the soul and death is a totally different thing. Is there any keys you can give us as we're closing here about how people can really use this end of life time for them, which is the theme of our show? Like every experience has a for you from the soul's point of view. So just to bottom line, and anything, whether it's, looking into a doula. I assume all this is in your website, which is in our notes, and also,
Yeah, you can see the roles that we do. And I just want to say that my doulas, the team that I work with, our services are free. I was listening to your introduction.
right.
Um, the words that caught my ear are going for the essence of the experience rather than the form.
Yeah.
And I think that is really critical in terms of how one approaches death. Um, what is the essence of what you hope to do? And I would say for each person, you are more in charge than you think you are
Yeah.
of the way you approach it. And I would say, as someone who is accompanying somebody, no matter who it is, there's an important phrase, and it's a hard one, but it's allowing each person the dignity of their own process.
Yeah.
So I might decide they should have this, that, and the other thing, but that's not mine to do.
Right.
I'm here to support their soul's yearning. And if what they want is a tuba band coming into their deathbed, that's what they get.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think it's being purposeful, and I often say to people, this is your final hurrah. Like, make it exactly what you want,
Yeah.
and
That's
and
lovely
and and to not wait. Don't wait for anything. Like,
to think
because we
about.
don't know. Well, we don't know when it's going to happen. We all have an expiration date. We just don't know when it is.
I don't know what it is necessarily. So you've been so generous with your time and with the services that you offer, and with our audience here. And there's three things. If you want to just tell them, you can write to your website, tell them what the website is, and what they can get by writing to you.
So my website is called dyingingrace.com, dyingingrace.com. And the things I'm offering your listeners today, one is a thing called a death file list. The kinds of paperwork and information you want to start getting together that makes it easier for the people left behind, your social security number, all that stuff. So I have a free checklist you can put together. The other thing that we do is an anointing of the body after someone has passed. And I have a beautiful little script. You can do it with any kind of oil to say goodbye to the physicality, the body temple. And anyone can do it. And it's a lovely way, particularly if someone's getting cremated, it's a nice thing to say goodbye to the temple, the body temple. Right. And then lastly, for anybody that has had a recent loss or not necessarily recent, we offer grief support. And I'm happy to offer anybody a free grief support and guide them towards some other resources depending on what kind of loss they've experienced. So those three things are available to any of your listeners.
That's lovely. And one other thing I'm thinking of, I did a eulogy at my mom's funeral, and one of the things that I did was to encourage people to think about the qualities of her in their life and to keep her alive in their hearts by living those qualities more fully that they appreciated and were used to getting through her, that they could now embody in themselves. And that's also a nice thing to think about doing, not just carrying forward your sorrow, but carrying forward their joy, their wisdom, or anything else that you got from their presence in your life. So you can all also write to me for a 15-minute free consult. I also have worked with people doing caretaking for people in the grief process, and all of the things I talked about, taking someone through their transition like I did with my mom. I'm so glad to have had you here today. So if we can just end this again by just putting your hand on your heart, taking a deep breath, and again, just getting in touch with that divine essence of love and joy and wisdom. And just take that energy now and send it out to the universe, send it to the Holy Spirit, the Christ, God, the universe, however you think of a higher force, and just ask them to use that energy that you're offering for the highest good of everyone, of all concerned. And so be it, and thank you for being with us, and we hope to see you next time. Please write and let us know if anything's been useful to you. If you have any questions, any comments, we'd really love to hear from you all, and God bless you. Peace. You have been listening to Soul Musings, exploring and embracing higher perspectives with me, Dr. Connie. Tune in every second Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific to learn how to use every experience for spiritual expansion and how to create the essence of the experience you want instead of the form. Learn about ways of living and working together that help build a more loving and cooperative world. Visit soulmusings.org to see more about what I offer and to book a 15-minute free consult.